Okay, so we are beginning the process of re-plumbing the entire head. Steady's coming to see who I'm talking to. I'm getting ready to start installing all the plumbing in the new redesigned head. And it's a little tricky. There's a lot of stuff to fit in a small place. I kind of mocked it up the other day with like small cutout templates and stuff, but I think the reality is like you just kind of have to piece stuff together and see what works, and then what doesn't you just kind of rearrange until it does work. So I'll show you what we're dealing with so far. I'd been waiting to do this part until all of the parts came in. I finally got in the 4-spar vented loops, keep the boat from sinking. And a little bit of advice about buying vented loops. When I first installed my original head setup, I was running into a lot of expenses, like sanitation hoses, very expensive. So I bought the cheapest vented loop I could get. I think it was like the 5 Oceans version. Whatever the cheapest is out there, that's what I bought. And what happens was it blew out, the valve blew out because someone tried to flush the head with both the seat cocks closed. So that pressure blew out that little like vent valve, and if you buy the cheapest one you can't get rebuild valves. So that's why I went ahead and bought a more expensive one from 4-spar, because you can get the rebuild sort of heads for those, and then you just stow those as spares. So that's just a little advice about something I ran into in the past. And that's a bummer when they blow out, because then it's like if someone flushed the toilet, then you have like waste dripping down from the vent. I ended up taking saran wrap, opening the cap, putting saran wrap over it, so I kind of like defeated the whole point of having the vented loop, other than the fact that it did go above the water line. But I just kind of bypassed the vent for quite a while because I didn't want waste like dripping down the wall. So word of the wise, buy a nicer one that you can get a rebuild kit for. Let's start looking at what we're up against. I have a blue tape line, which is my kind of the dream location of the new back wall for the head. This whole head is going to have a shower and everything eventually, so everything's going to need to be waterproof inside the enclosed part of the head. So the blue line you're going to see right now is kind of my stop point. I'm like, this is where we want the wall to be, so everything's got to fit, you know, to port of that. So let's take a look. Here's our little area. Here's our saltwater intake for the head itself. It's also going to be like the sump pump out for the shower is going to be plumbed to this through another vented loop. One thing I was stoked, I was able to, since we just put this in not long ago, it was pointing in like a very strange direction, just pointing in the way it was originally. I was able to break this seal with the seacock closed, so I got a label here telling myself to reseal it once I get it positioned which way I want it to be. This is the this is still loose because I need to get everything set up the way it needs to be before I Sika all these in place. So this is the pump out, and this is going to be the in to the holding tank. Holding tank's built in on the other side of this, and then we have a hole here that's going to be a vent that goes up to the vent up there. And then this is our pump out. If you hook up to the out, you know, you pull up someplace and get them to pump out, that's where that is. So right now we're going to be playing with this area, and the first thing that we're going to mount in place and then try to work around from there, and it's the biggest thing, is our new whale sanitation pump, like black water pump out, manual pump. So I'm getting rid of the macerator pump, and we'll be doing everything manually because I feel that's more reliable. This is a diaphragm pump. It's made specifically for waste. It's the MK5, and it's designed to kind of keep all the smells in as best as possible, but it's also going to be behind the wall, and I'm going to have like a small access hatch that you open when it's time to pump everything out. So let's get this mounted in place. Okay, so it's time to start mounting all the plumbing fittings in the new head. I kind of dry fit stuff and kind of felt it out to see how it would fall, and seems like it's gonna come together. It's kind of a tight area, so we're just gonna use the space to the best of our ability. I've made a bunch of riser blocks out of 2x4s that I sealed in 2 coats of epoxy resin, and then I painted them, and those are going to kick up all of my hoses to fall in line with our whale gusher black water pump that's replacing our macerator. So it stands pretty tall, so I had to make these blocks, coated them in epoxy, and a little bit of sanding, painted them white, just so they look nice and they're waterproof, and it's all going to be behind the scenes anyway, but I like things to look nice even if I'm the only person that ever sees them, and it protects them. So the first step is mounting one of the blocks and our vented loop, and I've already went ahead and sealed up, permanently installed the holding tank pump out and the holding tank valve. I'm leaving the fitting that where the waste goes into the holding tank loose for now until I run all the other plumbing, and then we're going to see where that hose needs to, like what angle it needs to be at. So that's the last thing in regards to the holding tank that we'll be buttoning up, and then we'll be able to seal up the holding tank entirely, which is exciting. But first things first, let's start getting these fittings installed one at a time, and I'm gonna kind of run the hose as I do it so that we make sure that everything falls in the right spot. So let's get to that. Okay, so I finally figured out all the plumbing. And the miracle in all of that is that I didn't have to go to West Marine to buy anything extra, which is a huge victory for anyone who does boat work. You know, that's a big victory to be able to pull it off. So here's the setup. This is the hose that will go to the toilet itself. Basically the dark matter comes in this hose, goes up this vented loop into here, at which point we direct it overboard like that. There'll be a hose here. So that's like when we're at sea, then that's how you pump everything overboard, just straight from the head, so it bypasses the holding tank. When we are under anchor or in a marina, we'll switch this valve to here. It goes from the head up into the built-in holding tank. When it comes time to empty the holding tank, we have our whale pump, MK5 black water pump, and we will switch this so that it directs it overboard, and this comes down here to the bottom, which is the lowest point in the holding tank. Pump this, boom. and it shoots out the paper towel holding out the stink. So, pump that, directs everything overboard. I'm very excited that we're able to get rid of our electric macerator pump. Replace it with this manual diaphragm pump from Whale Gusher. That's a big upgrade in my book because those macerator pumps kind of go out every 2 years with regular use. Like especially where the way my old setup was, to change it would have been an absolute bummer. There would have been a lot of waste. The other thing, I put a Y valve in here to go to the pump out, and I put it up high enough that it's above the holding tank. So if this ever gets clogged up, I can release this, send like a snake down to get that unclogged. That's about it. Both of our vented loops are obviously above the water line. We have another vented loop that's going to be on this side for the saltwater in for the head to do the flush. This stuff's going to have to move a little bit when we do all of our rigging because our external chain plates are going to go behind it. So there'll be a little bit of finessing this area when we go to do that. But then again, I might just put the chain plate forward, but we'll see where it falls. So that's the setup. Took me all day to figure it out, but it could have taken me several days. And it could have cost me a ton of money. So I did have to like modify my blocks that I made a little bit. So I have to kind of reseal, sand those down to get off all the kind of sharp edges, trim this one here a little bit so that because this hose goes underneath it. So just smooth everything off so there's no chafing, and seal up the blocks. Made a little riser for this we need to seal up. And other than that, it's like everything's ready to just get, bolted into place. Pretty happy with the way it came out. The next step in this project, after getting all this done, is I've started taping off where I think that the new head floor is going to go. And so that's the next big to do, is to start putting in like floor bracing and cutting out a template out of either cardboard or coroplast and kind of laying out where I think the new floor will go. So eventually there'll be a wall that runs kind of right along this shape that comes down kind of where this blue line is. And there'll be an access hatch door here so that we can open that to pump out to switch these around when we're underway or in, under anchor. There'll be another access hatch here to access this seacock. Make sure everything's cool with that. And we do have a water heater, a Johnson pump water heater coming in that's going to be mounted here. So we'll have hot water. Happy with this progress. And now it's time to clean up the boat and go home. Okay, so it took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 days to get all the plumbing kind of set up. Got the bases finished that I had to make. And yesterday I finally got everything completely buttoned down. So let's take a look at what the final plumbing arrangement is. The only thing missing from this equation, other than the toilet itself, is the vent hose, which I'm having trouble finding. I went to 3 different West Marines all over the place here, and nobody has hose. They're really short on supplies right now for certain things. So that's the only thing missing from the equation. But I'll show you what it looks like, all buttoned up, and then we'll talk about what the next step is. So here it is, all the pieces in place. I've resealed this. I changed the position of this from when we had it at the boatyard. Resealed it with True Blue yesterday. Got all of the hose clamps tightened down, 2 opposite ways because it's below the water line. I kind of did that in any place where I don't want bad things leaking out. Here's our manual pump. Pump out in place of our macerator. This is our Y that goes to our pump out, deck pump out. This is a vented loop for our saltwater in for our toilet when we get it installed. There's our hole for our vent, and that's going to go to here. And 2 vented loops up top. And someone did point out, I've seen it plumbed both ways with a vented loop above the manual pump and without, but somebody pointed out on Instagram, you know, that I might have problems because you need the like vacuum pressure to be able to hand pump everything out. But what that does is prevents the water here when we have it switched over. You're not just relying on this check valve to keep the water from siphoning into the holding tank and filling the holding tank with seawater. So that's what that vented loop does. And if it turns out to be a problem, then all I do is cap off that vented loop and go from there. But it should be high enough too that even if I cap it off, that it won't siphon water back into the holding tank, because that would be a real bummer. So that's the setup. All the plumbing's done. All the fittings for the holding tank are in place. I'll show you the inside of the holding tank right now. And I'm getting ready to glass down the lid to the holding tank. So let's look at that. So here's our built-in holding tank. So this is where the bad stuff comes in. That's our vent, and this is our pump out at the lowest point. And it's all glassed in. Now we're going to be glassing this in place. And then we have a lid that goes here. Inspection port that also, if you have to get in for any unfortunate reason and unclog something. But I'll be filling all these edges with thickened epoxy and then laying 2 strips of glass tape on top of that. Like strips of glass tape, so it'll be glassing it all the way down. That's what I'm doing today. Today, mostly, I'm just gonna really lay up lots and lots of thickened epoxy in those gaps. And once that kicks off later in the day, I'll lay the first layer of glass tape. And hope for the best. It should be perfect, but it is not something that I want to go wrong. So it's time to get to that. That's today's boat work. To offset the misery that is all the boat work we'd been doing, I did some hasty repairs to our old sailing sabot, and we took turns sailing it up and down the channel with the crew from the Black Lotus. The first clip is Camille's first ever sail on a sabot, and she was screaming up and down the channel before we knew it.
That has to be of the. I haven't sailed on many boats, but that's top 3. It's just so fun.
It is so much fun.
Woo! Bye.
She said, I don't know what to do. Yeah, right.
She's hauling ass.
Good luck.
Looked like a goddamn painting.
Painting of happiness. Painting of good life choices.
It's a good video.
We sailed all the way up. See? No sculling. Someone grab me.
Said he's gonna catch you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. It helps us a lot.
Thanks again to all of our patrons. Your contributions help us get the boat ready for big things.
Until next time.